Have you ever felt a presence in an empty room, caught a familiar scent that shouldn't be there, or heard a song that seems to play at exactly the right moment when you're thinking about someone who's passed? What if I told you that these aren't random coincidences, but something far more profound, actual attempts at communication from those who've crossed over? Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant minds in psychology and the study of human consciousness, spent decades exploring what happens to the soul after death, and what he discovered might completely transform how you think about loss, grief, and the invisible connection that continues long after someone takes their final breath. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Now, here's something most people don't realize. The first year after death isn't what we've been taught to believe. It's not about harps and clouds, eternal rest, or immediate judgment. According to Jung's extensive research into the collective unconscious and the nature of consciousness itself, something extraordinary happens during those first 12 months, a transformation so profound that it changes everything we think we know about what comes after. Has this ever happened to you? You're going about your day when suddenly you smell your grandmother's perfume, even though she's been gone for months. Or perhaps you keep seeing the same numbers everywhere, numbers that held special meaning for someone you loved. You might dismiss these as tricks of the mind, grief playing games with your perception. But what if these moments are exactly what they feel like, genuine attempts at connection? Jung discovered that the moment of death isn't an ending at all. It's a separation of consciousness from physical form. And what happens in that instant is nothing like what religion or popular culture has shown us. The soul doesn't float away to some distant realm. Instead, something remarkable occurs. A state of heightened awareness where the departed realizes they still exist, still think, still feel, still remember everything. They're simply existing in a different dimension of reality. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might completely change how you process grief, how you remember those you've lost, and most importantly, how you recognize the signs they're still trying to send you. During these first crucial days and weeks after death, departed souls experience something Jung called a profound confusion, not because they're lost or trapped, but because they're suddenly able to see their entire life from a completely different perspective. The transformation that unfolds during this first year isn't passive. It's an active journey of consciousness evolution, and here's the part that might surprise you most. They don't actually leave. Not immediately, anyway. Jung's research revealed something that contradicts almost everything we've been told about death and departure. Most souls remain close, sometimes for days, sometimes for weeks, watching over those they loved. But not because they're trapped in some dark spiritual limbo or unable to move on. The truth is far more beautiful and heartbreaking than that. Love holds them near. That's the hidden truth Jung discovered time and time again in his exploration of consciousness. It's the most powerful force in existence, and it doesn't simply evaporate when the physical body ceases to function. Think about it. After spending years, decades even, caring for someone, worrying about them, celebrating with them, how could that connection just vanish in an instant? It doesn't. The departed remain close because they're concerned about how you're handling their absence. They watch you grieve, and here's what will shift your entire perspective on loss. They're desperately trying to communicate that they're okay, while simultaneously learning, perhaps for the first time, just how deeply they were loved. Has this ever crossed your mind during those raw moments of grief? That maybe they can see your tears, feel your pain, witness your struggle to continue without them? Jung was incredibly specific about what happens during those first 3 days after death. This period is crucial, transformative in ways that most spiritual teachings don't fully explain. During these 72 hours, the soul undergoes what Jung called a comprehensive life review. But this isn't some Hollywood montage where scenes flash before their eyes. This is something far more profound, more impactful, more revelatory. Imagine suddenly experiencing your entire existence, not from your own viewpoint, but through the eyes and hearts of every single person you ever encountered. Every word you spoke, every action you took, every decision you made, you now feel its impact on others. That moment you snapped at someone in frustration, you now experience the hurt it caused them. That small act of kindness you barely remember. You feel the warmth it created in another's heart, that expression of love you thought went unnoticed. You now understand it was received, treasured, remembered. If you want to keep exploring these deeper truths about consciousness and what lies beyond the veil, subscribe to the channel. This is where we go beyond the surface, beyond the comfortable narratives, into the real mysteries of existence. Now, I want to go even deeper into this revelation because what Jung emphasized most strongly was this: the life review isn't about judgment. There's no cosmic scorekeeper tallying up your mistakes and victories, weighing your soul on some celestial scale. Instead, what emerges is pure understanding, complete, total, sometimes overwhelming understanding. The departed begin to comprehend all those missed connections, all those moments when love was expressed but not recognized, all those times when fear masked itself as anger or when worry disguised itself as criticism. Every misunderstood intention suddenly becomes clear. Every harsh word reveals the pain beneath it. Every act of protection shows itself as an expression of deep care. This journey of understanding transforms not just how the departed see their own life, but how they perceive the living. They're watching you now with eyes unclouded by ego, by defensiveness, by all the barriers that prevented clear communication when they were here. And what they want you to know, what they're trying so desperately to convey through those signs you keep dismissing. If you've experienced these mysterious moments of connection, if you've felt that inexplicable presence or noticed those impossible coincidences, write in the comments, "I feel them with me." What they want you to know is that all those little things you worried were annoying them, all those moments you thought they didn't appreciate, they understand now. Jung documented something absolutely beautiful in his research, cases that brought tears to even the most skeptical observers. He discovered that departed souls finally grasped the deeper meaning behind actions they misinterpreted during life. That husband who always brushed off his wife's constant reminders to drive carefully. On the other side, he suddenly comprehends that every single time she said, "Be careful," she was actually saying, "I love you, I need you, come back to me safely." These revelations transform everything. All the nagging that seemed irritating was love disguised as worry. All the criticism that felt harsh was fear dressed up as concern. Every misunderstanding, every miscommunication, every moment when intentions got lost in translation, it all becomes crystal clear. This clarity doesn't come from some external source judging them or explaining things to them. It emerges from within, a natural consequence of consciousness freed from the limitations of ego and defensiveness. And this understanding brings both profound peace and sometimes profound regret for all the love that was present but unseen, all the care that was offered but unrecognized. But here's where the journey takes a fascinating turn that Jung observed repeatedly across different cultures and traditions. Around the 40th day, after death, something significant shifts. This isn't arbitrary. Jung noted that this timeline appears in ancient wisdom from Orthodox Christianity to Tibetan Buddhism, from indigenous American practices to Eastern philosophies. There's a reason these diverse traditions independently identified this same threshold. It marks when the real transformation accelerates, when the soul begins to vibrate at a completely different frequency. Think of it like a phase transition in physics. Ice doesn't gradually fade away. It transforms into water, and water transforms into steam. Same fundamental essence, completely different state of being. This is what happens around day 40. The soul starts shedding the denser energies that kept it tethered to physical existence, the attachments and concerns that made it feel so human. But this process isn't something that just happens to them while they passively wait. Jung was emphatic about this crucial detail. The transformation requires active participation. The soul must choose to engage in their own liberation, must decide to let go of the familiar and embrace the unknown. And here's the hidden truth that might challenge everything you think you know about souls being stuck or unable to move on. Some souls resist this transformation, but not because they're trapped by unfinished business or cursed by cosmic forces. They resist because they're worried about you. They see you struggling with their absence. They watch you making decisions they're concerned about. They observe your pain and desperately want to help, to guide, to protect. And this very love, this beautiful, selfless compassion, becomes the anchor that holds them between worlds. It's both their greatest strength and their greatest limitation. The impact of this revelation is staggering when you really absorb it. Your grief, your inability to let go with love rather than desperation, might actually be keeping them from the transformation they need to undergo. But before you feel guilty about that, understand that this is part of the journey too, for both of you. Because what happens next in this 40-day window? If this perspective is shifting how you see your own grief or your connection to someone who's passed, write in the comments, this changes everything. Because what happens next in this 40-day window reveals one of the most heartbreaking paradoxes Jung ever documented. He described cases that still give me chills when I think about them. Situations where a mother's love, that supposedly purest form of devotion, actually prevented her from completing the transformation she needed. Picture this. A mother who passed away but remained intensely focused on her teenage daughter, worried about the decisions she was making, concerned about the path she was taking. This mother deliberately stayed in a lower vibrational state, refusing to fully transition, convinced that staying close to the physical realm was the only way to protect her child. But here's the tragic irony that emerged. Her very effort to remain accessible, to stay close enough to influence and guide, created an energetic barrier. The daughter, desperately seeking any sign of her mother's continued presence, couldn't feel anything. The mother's anxiety and concern generated a frequency that actually blocked the subtle communication the daughter was so desperately trying to receive. It's a cosmic catch-22 that reveals a profound truth about love and letting go. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do, whether we're the departed or the grieving, is release our grip and trust the journey. After this crucial 40-day threshold, once the soul has chosen to participate in their transformation and release their densest attachments, something extraordinary unfolds. Jung called it the learning halls or schools of consciousness. But don't picture anything resembling earthly education. This isn't about textbooks and lectures. This is about sudden, complete access to understanding. Imagine every question you ever asked during life. Why did that relationship fall apart? Why did I struggle with that particular challenge? Why did certain people come into my life at exactly the right moment? Suddenly, all the answers become available, not as intellectual knowledge, but as lived understanding. The departed begin to perceive what Jung termed soul contracts. These intricate agreements made before birth about the experiences and challenges each soul would encounter. Failed relationships reveal themselves as perfectly designed catalysts for growth. Painful challenges show their purpose in strengthening qualities needed for future stages of evolution. Every struggle, every triumph, Every seemingly random encounter fits into a larger pattern that becomes visible from this expanded perspective. Now I want to reveal something even more profound that Jung discovered about the architecture of existence itself. Life, he realized, isn't the chaotic, random series of accidents we often perceive it to be. It's actually a highly coordinated dance of consciousness, with each soul playing their carefully chosen part in the collective evolution of all souls. That stranger who smiled at you on your worst day, lifting your spirits just enough to keep going, their soul agreed to be there, in that moment, offering that precise gift. That book that mysteriously fell off the shelf, opening to exactly the page you needed to read. Orchestrated. That wrong turn you took that led to meeting someone who changed your life, planned before you were even born into this physical existence. This revelation completely transforms how we understand coincidence and synchronicity. What we call luck or chance is actually the visible surface of an incredibly complex web of soul agreements and orchestrated encounters. Every person who enters your life, every challenge you face, every opportunity that appears, all of it choreographed in the behind-the-scenes realm of consciousness before your soul took its first physical breath. And from the learning halls, the departed can finally see this dance in its entirety, understanding not just their own role, but how their choices rippled out to affect countless other souls. If you've ever experienced a coincidence that felt too perfect to be random, write in the comments, "I see the pattern now," understanding not just their own role, but how their choices rippled out to affect countless other souls in ways they never imagined during physical life. Jung documented one discovery in these learning halls that completely shattered conventional thinking about pain and betrayal. A man who had carried bitterness his entire life about being abandoned by his father learned something that transformed his entire understanding of suffering. His father's soul had actually agreed, before either of them was born, to play the role of the absent parent. This wasn't cruelty or failure. It was an act of profound sacrifice and love. The father knew that his abandonment would trigger a desperate search for meaning in his son, a spiritual hunger that would eventually lead him to become a healer who would help thousands of people. One soul accepted the role of villain, carried the burden of being seen as a failure, endured being remembered with resentment and anger, all because it would serve a greater purpose in the evolution of another soul. When you really absorb the implications of this revelation, it changes how you see every wound, every betrayal, every person who hurt you. What if they were playing a role they agreed to play, accepting the karmic weight of being your teacher through pain? This level of understanding typically crystallizes around the 6-month mark, what Jung identified as the first plateau of understanding. By this point, the soul has processed the intricate details of their most recent life, traced the connections between choices and consequences, seen how their existence wove into the larger tapestry of collective consciousness. And here, at this crucial juncture, they face a significant decision about the next phase of their journey. Some souls choose to ascend higher, moving into realms of consciousness that Jung himself admitted were almost impossible to describe using human language. He spoke of dimensions where colors exist that have no equivalent in our visible spectrum, where communication happens through pure meaning rather than words, where the experience of unity makes our deepest meditative states seem like barely scratching the surface. But other souls make a different choice. They decide to remain closer to the earthly plane, accepting roles as guides and guardian spirits for those still navigating physical existence. And here's something that might explain those experiences you've been having. Jung observed that souls communicate most powerfully around this 6-month threshold. They've gained sufficient understanding to offer genuine help, to see the bigger picture of your life and guide you toward your highest path. But they're still close enough to the human experience to remember what it feels like to doubt, to fear, to struggle with daily challenges. This combination creates the perfect conditions for breakthrough communication. Those recurring songs that keep appearing on your playlist at meaningful moments. That's not the algorithm. Those vivid dreams where conversations feel more real than waking life? That's not your imagination processing grief. Those synchronicities that make the hair stand up on the back of your neck? That's not coincidence. The departed have learned to navigate the veil between dimensions, figured out how to send signals through the static of physical reality. They're becoming fluent in a new language of signs and symbols, calibrating their messages to frequencies you can actually receive. But most people miss these communications entirely. Because they're expecting something different. We look for dramatic manifestations, objects moving across rooms, lights flickering in obvious patterns. Meanwhile, the real messages come through in whispers, through the sudden thought to call someone who then provides exactly the insight you needed, through the unexpected opportunity that appears right when you're ready for it, through that inexplicable wave of peace that washes over you during your darkest moment. If you've been receiving these subtle messages but doubting their authenticity, write in the comments, "I'm learning to trust the signs." Through that inexplicable wave of peace that washes over you during your darkest moment. Jung spent years studying this phenomenon, and what he discovered revolutionizes how we understand the language of the afterlife. The departed don't communicate through Hollywood-style paranormal drama because those frequencies are too dense, too crude for the refined state of consciousness they now inhabit. Instead, they speak through synchronicity, through feelings that arrive without logical explanation, through sudden knowing that bypasses rational thought entirely. That random urge to take a different route home that saves you from an accident you never knew was coming. That thought to reach out to an old friend who turns out to need exactly the support you can offer at that precise moment. These aren't the background noise of a busy mind. They're guided communications, carefully placed impulses from someone who can see patterns and possibilities you can't perceive from your limited vantage point in linear time. Jung emphasized this repeatedly. Trust those inexplicable nudges. They might be exactly what they feel like, messages from someone who loves you enough to learn an entirely new language just to reach you. As the first year approaches its completion, something monumental occurs in the soul's journey. Jung called the one-year mark the cosmic birthday, and the significance of this milestone cannot be overstated. By this point, the soul has completed a full cycle in their transformed state of being. They've moved through confusion, understanding, decision, and integration. Fundamental choices have been finalized about the trajectory of their continued existence, how involved they'll remain with earthly matters, what role they'll play in the larger cosmic plan, whether they're preparing for eventual reincarnation or dedicating themselves to service from the spirit realms. But here's what makes this anniversary so powerful for those of us still navigating physical reality. Jung discovered that the most profound, most undeniable communications often happen around this one-year mark. Not because the soul has suddenly moved closer. In fact, they've typically moved further along their evolutionary path by this point. The breakthrough happens because we, the living, have finally reached a state where we can actually receive what they've been trying to send all along. Think of grief as static interference on a radio signal. During those first raw months after loss, we're completely consumed by the shocking absence, the physical void, the overwhelming pain of separation. Our emotional frequency is so turbulent, so loud with anguish, that we can't tune into the subtle bandwidths where souls actually communicate. We're broadcasting so much noise that we can't receive the quiet signals being transmitted to us. But something shifts as we approach that one-year threshold. The acute, stabbing grief that made it hard to breathe begins transforming into something gentler, a soft sadness mixed with acceptance, a bittersweet recognition that life continues even in the aftermath of devastating loss. And in that softer, quieter emotional state, we become receptive. Our internal receiver finally calibrates to the right frequency. The static clears just enough for the signal to come through. Jung documented countless instances of people experiencing unmistakable signs on these anniversaries. Not vague feelings they could explain away, but objective events that defied rational explanation. A woman whose husband loved cardinals finding one tapping persistently on her bedroom window every morning for a week, starting on his death anniversary. A man discovering his deceased daughter's favorite childhood toy, lost for 2 decades, appearing in an impossible location on the exact date. These aren't coincidences stacking up randomly. They're orchestrated communications requiring enormous effort and energy from the soul to manifest in physical reality. If you're approaching or have passed a significant anniversary and experienced something unexplainable, write in the comments, "I received my message." Orchestrated communications requiring enormous effort and energy from the soul to manifest in physical reality. These anniversary signs are their way of reaching across dimensions to say something profoundly simple yet desperately important. I made it. I'm okay. The journey continues, and I'm still connected to you. The impact of receiving such a sign can be life-changing, transforming grief from a prison into a bridge, from an ending into a continuation. But Jung also made a discovery that's difficult to hear, one that challenges how we think about honoring our dead through the depth of our sorrow. He found that our grief, specifically certain types of grief, actually affects the departed in measurable ways. Not sadness itself, mind you. They understand sadness. They recognize it as love's shadow, the natural consequence of deep connections severed by physical separation. That kind of grief doesn't trouble them because they can feel the love within it. What does affect them, what creates a genuine problem in their evolutionary journey, is grief that refuses to release, that demands their return, that rages against the natural order of transformation. This particular quality of desperate clinging. Grief creates what Jung described as a magnetic pull on the soul. Imagine trying to move forward in your own life, trying to grow and evolve, while someone you love stands behind you weeping, begging you to come back to who you used to be, to stay in a place you've outgrown. It's love, absolutely, but it's also imprisonment. Think of it this way. It's like begging someone to return to kindergarten when they need to graduate high school. Your intentions are pure, born from love and longing, but the impact undermines their necessary evolution. The soul wants to progress, needs to transform, has important work to accomplish in their new state of being. But that magnetic pull of desperate grief creates a tension, a divided attention that makes their journey more difficult than it needs to be. Jung shared one of his most profound and heartbreaking insights through a case that still resonates decades later. A mother had been grieving her son for 3 years, and not the gentle sadness of missing someone beloved, but desperate, all-consuming grief. Every single night she cried herself to sleep, literally begging him to come back, to give her more signs, to not leave her alone in this world. She thought she was honoring him with the intensity of her sorrow, proving through her tears just how much he meant to her. But the message that came through Jung shattered her understanding completely. Her son's consciousness, speaking through Jung's work, said something that sounds harsh at first, but contains a deep truth. Mother, your tears are chains that bind me. Love me, remember me, celebrate what we shared, but free me. I have work to do in this realm, and you have work to do in yours. Your grief keeps both of us trapped in a moment that should be transforming into something new. This revelation isn't about suppressing grief or pretending loss doesn't hurt. It's about recognizing that there's a difference between honoring someone's memory and holding them hostage with our pain. The mindset shift required here is monumental but necessary. We're being asked to transform our relationship with loss itself, to see it not as an ending that must be fought against, but as a transition that serves both souls, the one who departed and the one who remains. If this perspective is helping you reconsider how you're carrying your grief, write in the comments, "I choose to free them with love." To see it not as an ending that must be fought against, but as a transition that serves both souls, the one who departed and the one who remains. And what happens during that transition period, specifically between months 6 and 12, reveals something that might completely reshape your understanding of existence itself. Jung discovered that during this window, most souls begin actively planning their next incarnation. And here's the crucial distinction. They're not being forced back into physical form by some cosmic law or karmic debt collector. They choose to return because, from their expanded perspective, they can see exactly what experiences, what challenges, what relationships they need for the next stage of their soul's evolution. They're making conscious decisions about their future parents, deliberately selecting the limitations and gifts they'll be born with, carefully choosing the challenges that will forge them into their next version. This isn't random assignment, it's intentional design. They're looking at the curriculum of physical existence and saying, "Yes, I need to learn that. Yes, I'm ready for this challenge. Yes, these particular struggles will develop the qualities my soul is working to embody." The level of agency and awareness in this process is staggering when you really consider it. We think of birth as the beginning, but it's actually the continuation of a journey that was being planned from a dimension of consciousness we can't normally access. Now, here's where Jung's research reveals something that might make you see every relationship in your life completely differently. Souls typically don't incarnate alone or with random strangers. They travel in what Jung identified as eternal soul families, groups of consciousness that incarnate together repeatedly, but in constantly shifting configurations. The person who was your mother in this lifetime might choose to be your daughter in the next. Your worst enemy, the person who caused you the most pain and struggle, might become your beloved spouse in another incarnation. That child you lost, the one whose absence carved a hole in your heart, their soul might return as your grandchild, carrying forward that connection in a new form. The roles rotate, the relationships transform, but the fundamental connections remain eternal. This explains those instant recognitions when you meet someone and feel like you've known them forever. Those inexplicable bonds that form faster and deeper than logic would allow. Those conflicts that seem to carry weight beyond what the current circumstances justify. You're not crazy for feeling these things. You're remembering, on some level, the long history you share with these souls across multiple lifetimes. And this brings us to something practical, something you can actually use right now in your relationship with someone who's passed. Jung discovered that souls develop specific communication codes with their loved ones, and these codes are typically fully established by the end of that first year. These aren't random symbols that could mean anything. They're deliberately chosen based on shared memories, inside jokes, meaningful moments from the relationship you shared, a particular song that played during a significant memory, a specific animal or bird that held special meaning between you, numbers that represented important dates, birthdays, anniversaries, the day you first met, scents that trigger precise memories of being together, even electrical disturbances that follow recognizable patterns. These codes become the language of your ongoing connection, the vocabulary through which they continue to participate in your life from their transformed state. And the beautiful thing is, once you recognize the code, once you understand the pattern they're using, if you've identified a specific sign or symbol that keeps appearing in connection with someone you've lost, write in the comments, "My code is," describe it briefly. Once you recognize the code, once you understand the pattern they're using, the entire dynamic of your relationship with them shifts. You're no longer separated by an impenetrable wall of death. You're engaged in an ongoing dialogue that transcends physical limitations. And here's something that might completely transform how you think about the love they have for you now. Jung discovered that love doesn't just continue after death. It actually evolves into something purer, more refined, more potent than what's possible within the constraints of physical existence. Think about all the barriers that exist when we're in bodies, navigating egos and psychological defenses and wounds from our past. Pride keeps us from saying what we feel. Fear prevents us from showing vulnerability. Old hurts create walls between hearts that want to connect, all those human limitations that made it so hard to express love fully, to receive it completely. They dissolve when consciousness is freed from the dense frequencies of physical form. That person who struggled to say "I love you" during life, they can express it freely now. The parent who was emotionally distant because of their own unprocessed trauma, that trauma no longer clouds their capacity to love. The partner who let fear dictate their actions. Fear doesn't exist in the purified state they now inhabit. What remains is essence, pure, unfiltered, unconditional love, flowing without restriction. And this evolved love is surrounding you constantly, whether or not you've developed the sensitivity to feel it. But there's another myth Jung systematically destroyed that causes so much unnecessary suffering among those left behind. The idea that souls get trapped because of unfinished business, unpaid debts, unsaid words, incomplete projects. Jung was emphatic about this. They don't remain stuck because they forgot to finish their taxes, or didn't get to say goodbye, or left some earthly task incomplete. That's Hollywood fiction creating drama where none exists. What can delay a soul's progression isn't unfinished business, but unfinished understanding. And here's the beautiful, liberating truth. They can complete these lessons from the other side, often more easily than they ever could have, while navigating the distractions and limitations of physical life. That forgiveness they never received during life, you can extend it now. And they'll receive it more purely than if you'd spoken the words to their living face. That conversation you never had the chance to have, it can happen now in the realm of consciousness, where communication isn't constrained by language or vocal cords. That love you never expressed because the moment never seemed right, express it now. They're listening with clearer perception than they ever possessed in physical form. Now, I want to reveal what Jung considered one of his most important discoveries about the relationship between the living and the departed. Over that crucial first year, something extraordinary develops, what he called a sacred contract, an unspoken agreement that forms organically between dimensions. The soul learns how to work with you from their side of the veil, and you learn how to work with them from yours. Together, you become something unprecedented, a bridge between worlds, a collaboration spanning dimensions. But this sacred contract requires something essential from you, something that might surprise you. It requires you to truly live, not just survive your grief or exist in a holding pattern of mourning, but to actually live fully, vibrantly, purposefully. Because your aliveness becomes the channel through which their influence can flow. Your joy creates an opening for their guidance. Your creativity becomes the vehicle through which their inspiration manifests. Your love acts as a conduit for their continued presence in physical reality. If you're ready to honor this sacred contract by choosing to live fully while maintaining your connection, write in the comments, "I commit to living." Your aliveness becomes the channel through which their influence can flow. Your joy creates an opening for their guidance. Your creativity becomes the vehicle through which their inspiration manifests. Your love acts as a conduit for their continued presence in physical reality. So as we close this exploration of what Jung discovered about the soul's journey through that crucial first year, I want to acknowledge something. If you made it this far, if you stayed through this entire deep dive into consciousness, death, and transformation, it means something. Maybe you're grieving someone right now. Maybe you're preparing yourself for the inevitable losses that come with being human. Or maybe you're just someone who refuses to accept the simplified stories we're told about existence and wants to dig deeper into the real mysteries. Whatever brought you here, I'm genuinely grateful you trusted me with your time and attention. If this resonated with you, if something I shared shifted your perspective even slightly, hit that like button. It helps this content reach others who might need to hear these truths right now. Someone sitting alone tonight wondering if the person they lost can still feel their love. And if you want more conversations like this, explorations into consciousness, the nature of reality, the mysteries that exist just beyond what mainstream thinking will acknowledge, subscribe to the channel. I'm building something here for people who aren't satisfied with surface-level answers, who want to explore the deeper architecture of existence. You'll find yourself in good company. Before you go, do me a favor. Write in the comments, "This message was meant for me." Let me know you were here, that this landed somewhere in your heart or mind. I read every comment, and honestly, sometimes your words become the inspiration for what I explore next. There's another video right here that takes this conversation even further into territory we couldn't cover. Today, click it and continue with me over there. The journey doesn't end here, it's really just beginning.